The last episode of the podcast, I talked about the history of Halloween, the movie franchise of Michael Myers, but the Halloween themed episodes continue with episode 9 of the Geekdom101 podcast, where Brandon Draven joins us to discuss some of the classic horror films of all time. Some of the lesser known ones, including subgenres like supernatural horror, zombie flicks. I mean, this is a must listen for people who want to check out some horror movies you've never heard of before. Maybe if you're looking for some hidden gems. I think it's a really great show. Original air date was October 19th, 2018, but it's a timeless one, and it's part 1 of 2. So the very next episode, episode 10, is the second part of this episode. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and start part 1, Geekdom101 podcast, episode 9, horror movies, must-see hidden gems with Brandon Draven. And welcome back to the Geekdom101 podcast. And today joining me, frequent guest, I guess returning quickly. He was just on the show just a few weeks ago discussing the evil, well, not really the evil, but, you know, the problem with modern social media. But now we're talking about a more fun topic, and that is the best films, the best Halloween films for you and your loved ones to enjoy this holiday season, because 'tis the season. And we're going to get to some of the movies here, but we're probably not going to get to all of them, so I'm sure we'll come back for a future episode at some point. Please welcome back Brandon Draven.
What's going on, man? Getting the hot tag right away, brother, and I'm ready to rock and roll, strut and stroll.
Now, the audience is, some of them are familiar with us with KLB, and some heard you for the very first time on the psychology episode. But so your passions, would it be fair to say that your passions as far as hobbies go would be the three things that we've kind of covered, you and I, in the past, which is, you know, psychology, wrestling, and movies? Is that fair to say?
That's pretty much my only passions, bro. That's kind of sad in a lot of ways. I mean, you know what? I take that back. I love music a lot too. I'm a musician, so that's pretty much four of my passions. Yeah,
music.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but you're right. I mean, I love those three things, and what I mean, and you know me. I mean, when I mean by love, I get very obsessive over it. All those three things. My career field is in mental health. I had a career field in the film industry for about 8 years, and the only thing I never dabbled in was in wrestling, and that's one of my biggest regrets. But that might change pretty soon, because I've been talking to you and our good friend Double G off air, and I'm either planning. My bucket list thing is to either promote a show, and it's gonna be very small time, you know, and or even take a couple classes and maybe even work one show. I'm like Batista when he fought in MMA, bro. I don't want to make any money off of it. I just want to do it as a bucket list moment, because I feel like
I didn't know you were serious about it. I thought you were just fucking around.
No, I am serious about that. I mean, I got some money saved up to maybe even run one show. I've been talking to some independent promoters about that. And it's something that
Productions, bro.
and it's something that would be like a couple years down the road, because I really want to be prepared for it.
Junior Kratos is gonna headline.
I've been seeing them a lot, bro. Because I've been going to a lot of indie shows to talk to these people to get some idea of what it takes. But yeah. So Junior Kratos, he's an indie geek for the people that don't know, by the way, indie wrestler. So yeah, those are my three passions, bro. And today we're gonna talk about one of them, which is horror movies. I'm a huge horror film fan, and on last week's show, you brought up the point where you were saying that a lot of these communities are very, very hardcore, and I'm part of that as far as the horror community. So you know, yeah. you have casual fans, and then you have the hardcores in any niche product, even Dragon Ball, you know, anything. Yeah. And it's cool, because when you're able to kind of be amongst them, you kind of, you know, that passion kind of spreads in a room, and it feels good. Like you were telling me about your convention experience. So that's good to kind of get involved with that. But yeah, we're going to talk about horror movies here tonight.
Yes. Last week, Mike Bracken was on. We talked about the Halloween films. But I wanted to get you on to talk about, you know, a little bit more. It's October, so pretty much every show I'm doing this month is going to be themed on these, you know, horror movies. I do want everybody listening to kind of try out some of these movies. I think we have a lot of younger listeners, but also a lot of older ones, and they may miss some of the newer movies, and the younger ones may miss some of the older movies. So I think it'll be good for them to, at least one movie from this show, you can try checking out on Netflix or renting it somewhere, and you'll probably get enjoyment out of it. Now, speaking of last week's show, okay, me and Mike talked about Halloween 1 through Rob Zombie, I guess, 1 through 10 or whatever.
Rob Zombie.
Yeah, Robbie V. Now, one thing we briefly glossed over was Halloween 3. Now, when I hit you up about the show, before I even put it out, the first question you asked me was, did you mention Tom Atkins? And unfortunately, I told you that we couldn't really talk too much about it because we wanted to go through the Myers movies. But I want to start by discussing Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. I think it's a good way to start this because even though Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is not a Michael Myers movie, it's still a movie that I think, it is a weird movie, it's an unusual movie, but it's one that I think does capture the Halloween spirit better than a lot of the other movies that are in the Michael Myers franchise. And I think the movie for years got a lot of shit, and every time it would get shit, it was always the same thing. No Michael Myers. And I don't think that's a fair, contextually, it's not really a fair criticism because the goal that, from what we understand, it was Carpenter's idea. I got to look into that a little bit more.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was to do anthology movies. Now, he wasn't going to direct them all. He was just going to help produce them, from what I understand.
Yes. Maybe later on, if this thing would have hit, he would have directed maybe a couple of them. But the working theory was that his production company, the people, Mustafa Akkad, who was the guy that funded Deborah Hill, well, she was a producer. All these people, they felt that the Michael Myers story had come to an end in Halloween 2, and so they wanted to continue the tradition with this anthology theme where every year you were going to get a different story.
Yes.
So they tried it with Halloween 3, and the people were to say that
Michael Myers, right?
That's right. Now let's paint the picture for the people. To kind of put them back to that time. Back then, news didn't spread around as much as it did now. I mean, back then you probably only had Fangoria and a couple other magazines to kind of keep you in the loop as far as the production of films. And for that, you had to be a hardcore. So that was very limited. So this idea of like logging on is like people are saying today, how could you not know that you were not going to get Michael Myers if, nowadays we're tracking production, we're tracking trailers before the movie even comes out. Well, that wasn't the case back in 1982. All right. Back then it was just about,
you saw a TV spot that you were like, oh, Halloween 3. Okay.
Yeah, and the whole thing is that a lot of the TV spots for Halloween 3 were just like that little anthem that became popular, like happy happy Halloween, that whole deal. And then you would get a couple cuts of the kids wearing the famous mask, the pumpkin, the witch, and the skull. And so that's all you had. So as a film goer, you were going and think about the casuals, bro. Think about the 9-to-5 guy that's probably about 40 years old taking his family. They're expecting a movie that they were not gonna get. And so a lot of people came off incredibly upset. The critics kind of hammered this film, but the critics have always been hard on horror because horror is kind of a lowbrow entertainment in a lot of ways, although that's evolving. I'll talk a little bit about that later. So you put all that in together and you have a recipe for disaster. People weren't ready for this movie. And so that's what ended up happening.
And then, like always, it becomes a cult classic as time goes by. It gets a following.
Well, here's what happened with that, and a lot of these films did. Even Friday the 13th Part 5, which is is the contemporary to this film, even though that one came out a couple years later, I think 85. The thing about these films is that if you were a kid in New York or a kid in Orlando or a kid in Los Angeles, there was no way for you to express your opinion of how much you loved it because the world was smaller. There was no internet. Well, when the internet started becoming prominent, all these little pockets of fans that liked Halloween 3 all of a sudden were able to communicate with each other and kind of create this bubble of fandom for it. All of a sudden it was like, wait, I thought I was the only one that liked this movie. You like it too? Yeah. And this is the reason why. Boom, 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 boom. And with the culture of the convention culture that really kind of rose within the last 10 years, the fans brought that movie back to prominence. And it brought all the actors with it, and so now the movie itself is kind of loved for what it was, and people enjoy it, and it is. I think it's a fairly good movie, I've always liked it, and I think it's. But then again, in 1982, I wasn't part of that, I was a year and a half old. I wasn't part of that fan that went to see it and was disappointed. I caught it later on in home video, and it was pretty good. So yeah, it's called Season of the Witch. And it has the great.
Like I said, just to clarify, the idea was that every year they're going to make a different Halloween film with a different storyline. They weren't even planning on bringing Michael back like they did for Halloween 4. It was just going to be different movies with the name Halloween sort of being like a franchise, and then they were going to eventually, I'm sure, keep it going that way. I don't know if they had any plans to bring Michael back at all. But this changed everything. But you were saying also, tell us about Tom Atkins and why you like him so much.
Well, in the horror community, this guy's a legend, bro. This guy, first of all, he played a lot of the films that he was in. He played that Lothario, fucking, Don Juan.
Lothario, bro?
No, not that guy, bro. Not the Super Sock.
Not the Super Sock, bro.
So he was always the womanizer guy. In this film,
he's in Creepshow, which but keep going, yeah.
Yeah. So Tom Atkins, he starred in a lot of classic. He worked with John Carpenter a lot. He was in The Fog. He was in Escape from New York. He was in this one. And then he also has a huge library of like films that he's worked on, like The Ninth Creepshow, Two Evil Eyes. I mean, this guy's a legend. He was in Maniac Cop, and
a lot of these movies are what we're talking about. Like these are probably worth checking out because Maniac Cop, bro. Maniac Cop was my shit many years ago. I haven't seen it in years, so I have no idea if it holds up.
Yeah, that was by William Lustig, who's another guy that people that's another legendary guy in the lore of the horror community, because William Lustig gave us Maniac from 1980. It's an incredible film, and it's a classic itself. So this guy William Lustig has a huge library of films, and he also started a company called Blue Underground, which reproduces old horror films and it cleans them up, and then he puts them out on Blu-ray. So this guy Billy Lustig, as we call him, he's kind of a legend himself, and he directed Maniac Cop, and then of course Part 2 has Bruce Campbell in it. Yes. As the lead. Yes. And so that's another classic trilogy. If you guys want to check out a good trilogy, is Maniac Cop 2, and Maniac Cop 3, Batch of Silence. But that one's not that good. So stick to Maniac and Maniac Cop 2. And when I'm giving recommendations here tonight, I'm very conscious of what the newer generation wants to see. So I'm not going to give you guys these slow plotting, cinematic master.
I think we should tell them about the movies, and then they can kind of figure out if it's for them. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
That is true. But Maniac and Maniac Cop and Maniac Cop 2, they're fun movies. They're the kind of movies where you go kind of get your girlfriend and watch them, and they're still very watchable today. You're not gonna be bored. And they have some good gore and some good scares. So those are some of the movies that I recommend off the hop right there. But going back to Tom Atkins, so he established himself as this horror guy, and so again, as the convention era grew, that was one of the guys that people adopted and kind of gave him that legend status. There's a ton of them. And so he was one of them. So whenever he pops up, it's always a good time. And the last time he got a payday was for the My Bloody Valentine 3D remake, which was incredible. It was one of those first 3D movies that came after Avatar, because for the people that don't know, Avatar pretty much changed everything, because
it brought 3D back, which was not a thing for years. But Friday the 13th Part 3 and Jaws 3 are 3D horror movies.
There was a bunch of them. Amityville 3D, but that was a gimmick that was used, and then it was laid to rest. And then what happened is that Jimmy Cameron came up and he reintroduced the genre, because he created certain effects that were possible with the new technology. And then after that, everybody hopped on the 3D bandwagon, so to the point where now every movie comes out in 3D. It's post-converted, which is bullshit, but everything's in 3D now.
But I do feel like it's died down in the last few years. It's not as big as it was when Avatar came out.
But the interesting thing about it is that every theater has a 3D projector for that reason, because of Avatar. Yes. So now there's always going to be a screening room that's devoted to 3D,
and IMAX 3D as well. Yeah.
Yes. So My Bloody Valentine 3D was one of the first that came out after Avatar, and it used 3D technology. It filmed in 3D, which there's a difference between filming in 3D and post-converting. So I don't know how you could tell the difference now. Back in the day, maybe in 2010, 2011, during a trailer, they would still tell you underneath post-convert, or the claim to fame was like actually shot in 3D. And what happens there is that all the gimmicks are geared towards the 3D experience, whereas all these Marvel movies or whatever, they're just post-converted, and so you're not getting. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that by default looks cool in 3D, but you're not getting the 3D gimmicks, because that's not really important. They just want to cash in on the 3D thing. So that's pretty much where Tom Atkins comes from, man. And this guy was cool as fuck, because, for example, in Halloween 3, he's a doctor, right?
Yeah. He's basically the lead.
Yeah, he's the lead. But keep in mind that he has kids, bro, and he's married. But he ends up fucking that broad, bro. Like the one that's kind of the girl, the one that's kind of going with him on this.
What else is new in these movies? I mean, they ain't supposed to be moral people here, you know.
But it's funny because he comes out and they show his kids and his wife, and then he goes off on this journey to track off who's killing these kids with these masks, and then he meets this girl. And then he calls his wife for like, oh, I'll be late for dinner or some shit. And then the next thing he's fucking this girl, bro, like without absolutely no reservations. And he bought a 6-pack of beer.
That's something that either your dad or my dad would do, bro. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
And then with Tommy Atkins, bro, he never had I hear you. But with Tommy Atkins, what popped me, bro, is that he never had to work for it, bro. Like the women's were just like they were magnetized by this guy, bro. So they were the ones that were always kind of like, hey, what's up? Let's do something. And he had that stash, bro, the porn stash going on. And he 9 times out of 10 he had a scene where he was shirtless. This guy was alpha through and through, bro. I fucking love Tommy Atkins. He's old as fuck now, but then again, he was old here too, and he was still getting them dimes. So good for him.
So you're basically telling the people what I'm telling them, and that is, if you hear criticism of Halloween 3, make sure you watch it at least once. Because I know, like Mike said, Mike doesn't like it. There are genuine reasons not to like it, but don't be one of those people who just writes it off because it's not a Myers movie. Because I feel like Halloween 3, like I said, it's better than Halloween 5. It's better than Halloween 6. I think it's better than Resurrection. I mean, I think it's actually objectively better than a lot of the Halloween movies that have Myers in it. I think it should be worth a try. I think you should try it. I really do.
Yes, so essentially the storyline about this movie, I'm not going to get into the details of it because people got to watch it, but the storyline is that you have a male witch, bro, a male witch who's like this millionaire industrialist, wants to kill all the children on Halloween night.
Yeah.
And the way he goes about that is that he creates these masks, 3 masks. You have the pumpkin, you have the witch, and you have the skull. And he promotes them with this commercial that's sweeping the land, right? All these kids are tuning in for this commercial, and then of course that gave us the catchy tune that I said earlier, the Happy Halloween, which is classic, by the way. And the company was called Silver Shamrock. I actually have a Silver Shamrock shirt. And what it was that
should have been called Ken Wayne, bro. But anyways,
this is wacky, bro, because his plan has all kinds of plot holes, which I'll get into in a minute. So his idea to kill all the children on Halloween was for them to throw on the mask, throw on the hood, as we would say in wrestling. For them to throw on the hood and watch this commercial, bro. Like I think he gave them a specific time, like at midnight or some shit like that.
It worked out great in Mexico.
No. It was at 9. That's what I remember. It was at 9. All the little kids were supposed to sit in front of their television and throw on their hoods, and then all of a sudden, bro, the commercial was triggered with this little wacky like metal thing in the back that had all kinds of wacky like electrical things, and that was supposed to explode in your head, and then because he was a male witch, your fucking head would turn into like snakes and cockroaches and shit like that, bro, and so that was the plot line. And he was using this weird fucking big ass crystal to do all this shit. Yep. Of course, the biggest question comes, like, we have time zones, bro. So it was only gonna work in us. Like, what the hell was gonna happen?
The Gremlins problem, you know, when they say after midnight or whatever it was. But when is that, you know?
Yeah, and the thing about that, brother, is that I've always liked this. It's the little details, because I've always liked the fact that like John LaRoquette's voice in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the intro, that's fucking creepy, bro. Right. Like. I always like when these filmmakers when they look for that, like fucking without John LaRoquette's intro in the beginning, the movie loses a little something. It's not much, but it loses something. Well, here, the commercial has that creepy guy. All the kids gather around. It's time. Like, it's this very soothing guy that's in the commercial to tell these kids to kind of go in front of the TV and start watching this commercial with their mask on, you know. And the one of the big scenes in that movie. It's they have this warehouse and they have this family and they invite them over, bro, and they have this like snot-nosed brat who's all happy and shit, and they make him wear a mask. They put him in these weird trailers, and they make the kid wear a mask because they want to run tests to see if this shit's gonna work. Yeah. And of course we get the big reveal, right, of what his plan is, which is to fuck. So the stupid brat is watching the TV. And all of a sudden, his fucking head.
No, don't. I would just stop right now, bro. You're starting to go into spoiler territory now. I would just.
It's not.
See the movie. Okay. Well,
I mean, the brat. his head fucking munches up, bro. That's pretty much all I'll say. And then, but Tommy Atkins got to save the day. That's really where the movie's at. So it's a good movie. It's one of those apocalyptic movies. That's all I'll say about that. There's really, you know,
and what do you mean apocalyptic movies? If you don't mind explaining that, what you mean by that?
Well, because the movie, dude, the fucking movie's goddamn older than me. Fuck that. I'm gonna spoil this shit.
All right. I was just telling people that, you know.
No, but
a lot of people skip this movie because they think it sucks when there's cool twists in it. But keep going.
Okay, so once they kill the male witch, what happens is that the switch is still on. So the movie ends with Tommy Atkins in the tower calling the stations, turn the commercial off, and then it works, and then he switches the channel and the commercial's there, turn it off, and then so the movie ends with this fucking guy can't get rid of the commercial because all the stations are playing it, and that's how it ends. So it ends kind of like what's gonna happen is gonna happen, bro, and that's it. That's the end of the movie.
All right. Well, I mean, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't spoil it, bro. I know you say you don't care, but I mean, I'm just I haven't seen it yet, you know.
Well, tough luck, brother. Just don't throw on that hood at Halloween if you haven't seen it. And so that's it. And John Carpenter always said that he loves those what he calls the apocalypse endings, where like because the Thing has it, Prince of Darkness has it. And the Mouth of Madness has it. Those are his trilogy of the apocalypse, as he calls it. Because at the end of the day, no matter what, you're fucked. And I mean, obviously,
bleak endings.
Yeah, because the Thing itself, it's pretty bleak because both characters have the Thing. One of them has the Thing in them. And at the end of the day, no matter what, one of them's gonna get one of them's gonna die, and one of them's gonna get rescued, and they're gonna carry the Thing with them to the mainland, and that's it. It's gonna start over. And of course, the great Quentin Tarantino completely stole that ending in The Hateful Eight, because the Hateful Eight's ending is very identical to the Thing's ending, where you know our heroes are fucked, but they still won, and they find redemption in knowing that they did everything they could to you know save the day or whatever, but they're still fucked. And it's identical. So
right.
So that the Thing is, I mean, that's a legendary film. That's another one. People need to watch The Thing, bro, because The Thing's amazing. Kevin Williamson, the great Kevin Williamson, he did that, and he copied The Thing in The Faculty with that scene where The Faculty was Robert Rodriguez directed it and Kevin Williamson wrote it, and there's a scene where they're trying to find out who is an alien, and it beat for beat it follows the what happened in The Thing. You know, I'm not gonna give that away, but anyways, so if you want to watch good films, watch The Thing, watch The Faculty. The Faculty is for the mid '90s post Scream kind of teeny boppy, you know, films that have kind of gotten people. There's a charm to those as well. You know, I'm talking about Valentine. I'm talking about Urban Legends 1 and 2. The Scream sequels, you know, those are also very good films, and they all got spawned from the success of Scream. You know, those films that are kind of self-aware, you know, those kind of films.
The meta movies. I wanted to briefly talk about, because I don't want to go on to this topic for a long time, but some of the more, I guess, PG kind of family films. I know a lot of listeners have, like, families. You know, you've got movies like Hocus Pocus, you've got Night Before Christmas, Addams Family. Those are kind of safer horror movies, you know. And Addams Family's not really a horror movie. In fact, I don't even think Hocus Pocus is either. It's more of a comedy, but it does fit with the Halloween kind of theme. And also, cheap plug, but over on Verve, they have episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I did feel like Are You Afraid of the Dark was great because it's a show that's essentially tailored for kids as far as it being a horror show, but it doesn't insult your intelligence. And that's one thing. That's the important thing I think about horror, is that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day how gory or violent or disturbing something is as far as, like, you know, controversy. It is more so the fact that how well is it made. And there are certain movies and, you know, things that it might not be the most bloody affair, but as long as it's good, you know, that's all that matters at the end of the day. So do you have any kind of, I obviously have the Charlie Brown Great Pumpkin special. Is there anything that comes to mind that I didn't mention that you think would be good for more like, more of a toned down kind of Halloween thing, you know, before we get into the really good stuff?
Well, there's a few, actually. I mean, off the top of my head, some things that are not going to scar your child too much, but they have a pretty good story. And you have the movie called The Others with Nicole Kidman. that has a pretty good twist at the end. It came off of the hype of The Sixth Sense, which is another film that I think is pretty safe, and it has some pretty creepy moments for younger kids. You have Arachnophobia from 1990, which I thought
I forgot all about Arachnophobia.
Yeah, that's another good one that's fun. It has Johnny Goodman being wacky as the exterminator. You have Drag Me to Hell by Sam Raimi. Now that one has a couple of scenes that could might be a little stressful for younger kids, but in general it's just a kind of a dark comedy, and it's also pretty fun. So people could watch that one. The Insidious movies are all PG-13. But I will say this: I think the top three that come to mind when people are talking about just nice, fun PG-13 horror are Poltergeist. Even though that's a little too extreme sometimes, but that is kind of a family movie. Obviously, The Gremlins, and also Monster Squad. Those are the top three movies that
I wanted to bring up Poltergeist because I think that movie.
That movie's scary, bro, but it has a PG-13.
That's a legit movie. I mean, that's a movie that actually, if I had children, I wouldn't show it to them until they hit a certain age, because that movie is extremely creepy. I mean, that's like that's literally like the archetype for how to build up a movie that's going to give you nightmares that night. You know what I mean? Like, I think that movie is right up there with Exorcist as far as it having really disturbing imagery.
Yeah, but the ratings board didn't find anything that was going to be, I mean, it was a different time back then,
Well, it's the same thing with Texas Chainsaw. The first one has no actual blood in it, but it's so damn violent and gory that, I'm sorry, it's not violent and gory, but it's so, like, atmospherically and masterfully directed that tricked people into thinking it was violent. You know what I mean? So I just think it's one of those situations, where, yeah, it might not actually be visibly violent or visibly scary, but I don't want my kids to not want to go to school the next day because of this shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being real with you, because that movie will fuck you up, bro.
Unfortunately, I come from an era where I was watching fucking hard R.
Me too. I'm not a
when
pussy,
I was
bro.
Like 8 years old, bro. I'm sorry, I can't relate to this fucking question.
I'm not a pussy, but I'm just saying, like,
No, but at the same time,
Poltergeist 1 and 2, though, I think have to be categorized. I think you got to put it in there. You got to put it in there, bro.
But at the same time, I understand. Obviously, I'm in the mental health field, so I do understand the damage it could do. So I wouldn't recommend people showing that kind of film. Like, for example, with me, I have my nieces are 11 and 12. And like the other day, we went to see The Nun. So whenever we do that, we have conversations after the movie's over, so we could have defined boundaries of what they just saw. And I don't want them bringing any of that home with them, because they still have that brain. Their brain is still developing. They don't have the experience we have. So you got to kind of be careful if you are going to expose them to that at that age or even younger. You have to have conversations with them. Make sure they know exactly what they're seeing and how that's fake. If you have any reservations, then just don't do it, because it's not.
Don't show them Conspiratus.
Or Faces of Death. Definitely don't show them Faces of Death, bro.
No, that definitely not.
Oh, and definitely don't show them Traces of Death either.
No, that's even worse. Yeah. We'll probably come back and do a show about those.
Well, there's one in the ether, isn't there?
Well, I'm assuming you still have it, right?
Dr. James B. Gross.
No, Francis B. Gross, bro.
B. Gross, bro. That's even better.
Remember, he had the John Holmes freaking facial hair and shit, bro. Extra fucking douchey, bro.
And they still worked us when he died in part 4. That's the part that disappoints me, because we should have been more. And they still worked me.
Yeah, Michael Cross was still the director and the producer, bro. He was alive and well, bro, but he fucking bullshitted.
So and going back to the television shows, that's the cool thing about television and their horror themed shows, is that they had regulations, because they're on television.
But a lot of them were still good. Really? Now.
No, exactly. So we're talking about something that the kids could watch. Like you said, Are You Afraid of the Dark? That's classic, and it has a lot of classic episodes. Goosebumps is another good one.
I'm not a fan of Goosebumps. I think Goosebumps is heavily overrated, bro. It's not as good as Are You Afraid of the Dark, in my opinion.
And also you have Eerie, Indiana, which was okay. It was a little more. Some of those episodes were a little more scary, but it wasn't the.
I didn't even know you knew about that show.
Come on, bro. I'm a horror nerd. The classic one is Are You Afraid of the Dark, though. That's the one that's really, really good.
Seasons 1 and 2 of Are You Afraid of the Dark still hold up. I watched them earlier this year, and every episode is very different, very creative. Obviously, they have cliches. But I feel like Goosebumps is even more cliche. I feel like with Goosebumps, one of the reasons why I don't like it is because as a kid, it was predictable. As an adult, it's predictable and insulting. you know what's gonna happen. Plus, I think the show was shot really low budget, even more lower than Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was shot by Canadians, and they're always good. But I just feel like I think Goosebumps is a step down from Are You Afraid of the Dark. I honestly feel that way.
And they all sound like Bruce Hart, I heard.
I don't know if it's that bad, bro. Nothing. You want to talk about scary? Listen to a Bruce Hart interview on The Observer, bro. That's scary. Now, one of the things that I think movies are somewhat missing in the mainstream now is the anthology type films that have multiple stories in them. I miss these movies so much, and I think one that should be brought up, Trick or Treat, bro, from 2007. I think that one's a good one for Halloween.
That's a Halloween classic, man. That film is one of our modern classics. I just went to a Halloween horror movie nights over at Universal Studios. They had an incredible maze. They have Sam the kid, the pumpkin kid with that's kind of their mascot. But that movie is incredible because that film, what it did is that it connected all the stories. So you're watching one overarching story, and but it's all happening in one night, so they're all connected. So sometimes you see like an overlap, and so the anthology film. I'm glad you brought this up, bro, because this is a great topic.
There's a lot, dude. There's Creep Show. I mean, there's Tales from the Dark Side. There's so many. I mean, we don't get them anymore as much as we used to.
Well, we do, but they're all video on demand.
Yeah, they're all underground. Yeah, like VHS, which you put me onto a few years ago, and I love the first VHS.
Yes, and then you also have the newest one, or the latest one that kind of got over was Tales of Halloween, which is on Netflix right now. People want to watch that. That one has about 9 stories. It has another Scream Queen, Adrienne Barbeau, is kind of like the horror host of that one.
Adrienne Balboa.
Barbeau, boo, whatever the fuck.
I thought she died before Rocky
6. So yeah, brother. That one's good. And like I said, Creepshow's a classic. Two Evil Eyes is good, which has George Romero and Dario Argento directing 2 stories. There's a lot of them, bro, and that's one thing. People need to seek out the anthology films because that one's cool because you could just sit back with, again, with your lady friend or your family, or your boyfriend, whatever, and so just watch them. And what it is that you don't have to even invest for the entire movie because you're getting little subsections. You're getting like 3 or 4 stories.
And that's easier sometimes to digest instead of having to wait for a long plot. It just goes by quickly. Yeah,
like remember when I turned you up to one of them? Goddamn, I forget the name of the movie. It was in the 70s, but the actual story is called Danny, I think, which is about the demon that infested the girl, the mom, and the kids chasing her all over the house. Do you remember that? You probably never watched it, but
it doesn't ring a bell right now.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That was pretty scary because of the way it was filmed and whatnot. Of course,
VHS was amazing. That was when you put me onto that movie. I put it on to a lot of other people. I liked the first one the most. I did not like the sequels at all, but the first one I thought was tremendous. And I liked all 5 of the stories.
Well, the second one has the one of the most beloved shorts, which is the cult one. Where they go to the cult and then the cult does that sacrifice to bring back Satan or whatever, and the last 5 to 7 minutes of that film is intense, bro, because it's found footage. Well, the whole gimmick is that
you're talking about VHS 1, correct?
No, VHS 2.
Okay, because VHS 1 had the cult at the end.
That's right. With the Halloween guys, going to that party, and they end up going to the wrong house, and that's another great story, bro. Yeah. And then it also had the one about the girl that's kind of like a vampire at the club, which she ended up getting her own movie called Siren, which wasn't that good, but that short got over so well that they ended up making an entire movie out of it. Yeah. So yeah, the anthology horror film it's a huge part of the genre, and there's some beloved ones, there's some that suck, and there's some like Dead Time stories. There's some that are like very, very like underground, but they're also pretty good. So check them out.
How do you feel about, and again, we're talking about the past now, because we don't see this as much anymore, but I think we are seeing it more now because TV's kind of picked up. How do you feel about, and we talked about the PG-13 thing, some of the television made-for-TV horror films? So now we have good and bad here, specifically Stephen King ones. We've got It with Curry, which is Tim Curry, which I think is a classic, mostly because of Tim Curry. The acting is horrible except for Tim Curry. Still a great movie, though. I like it. I think it gets a lot of shit, but I like it. We've got other movies like Stephen King's The Stand, which you've put over tremendously. I think that's one of the better ones. And then you got also the 1997 version of The Shining, which was way more accurate to the book, but not a very entertaining film. How do you feel about those movies? Some of them aren't that easy to find. They're not all on Netflix, but there are usually in the DVD bin. How do you feel about those?
Well, the classic one there is the one me and you talked about many, many years ago. It's called Ghost Watch, which was the documentary one about the newscast going to the haunted house, and then at the end, the haunt becomes real, and it's almost like a news coverage. Do you remember that one? You used to say they used to scare you as a kid.
Ghost Watch. No, the one that scared me as a kid, I don't think it was Ghost. Actually, I think it might have been. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, it was about the newscast that went live to the house that was supposedly haunted, and it ended up being haunted, and then you get some wackiness out of it. I don't want to give it away, but it's pretty fucking scary, especially at the end because everything gets haunted. So it gives you the idea that you, as a watcher, you're not safe either, because remember, the demons go over, or the ghost or whatever, they infiltrate the news station as well, where everything's taking place, and it's all subtle, right? The newscaster's there, and the lights will kind of flicker, and they just laugh it off, and and then it gets more and more and more darker as the movie goes on. That's from 1992, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the one I was that scared the crap out of me was that alien abduction movie. Which was a found footage film. Now, do you want to go over some of the found footage stuff? Because I feel like you've got movies like Texas Chainsaw, that was sort of felt like a found footage film, but it really wasn't. And even Halloween 1 at times feels that way, even though it is cleaned up for the Blu-ray. And this was a thing for a while. And then Blair Witch Project in 1999. That was the movie that I think really brought the found footage genre to life, because what they did with the movie, and this was something I think that was very brilliant at the time, I think we talked about this before briefly, is that it wasn't that they just made this movie and put it out. They created this entire, and this is when the internet was just starting out, so not everybody had it. They created this entire backstory where they actually had like a fake news report. And the same thing they did with Alien Abduction. Alien Abduction did this first in like 97. Where they had a fake news report, they had fake scientists that looked real. I mean, it looked real. With Blair Witch, they had a special on Sci-Fi Channel, I should have known, where they talked about the ancient Blair Witch legend. And when you see the movie, you're not supposed to know it's a movie. And a lot of people in 1999 thought this was real. People thought this was an actual found footage documentary. They fooled so many people and made so much money from it, bro. The Carney level is huge. Can you talk about like that film and like what spun off of it? Because I feel like after that movie, it did become kind of a gimmick.
Well, the found footage genre is a genre up into itself. Now we still have hundreds of films that are being made, and the problem with that is that anybody could make one. All you need is a video camera and you have a story, which so that means that you're gonna get about 95% of shit. Where you're going to get 5% of good movies. I'm going to give you a couple of them right now that left an impression on me. But going back to let me real fast talk a little bit about the television aspect of it. There's one that we could kill two birds with one stone. There's a movie that came out in 1975 that's a classic called Trilogy of Terror. That one, that's right. That one's an anthology movie, and it's a TV movie, and it starts another legendary Scream Queen called Karen Black. Now she plays 3 characters in this movie, but the one that everybody knows about is the last one with the Zuni doll, with the Sunni fetish doll, where the little doll man is going after her, and it's like one big chase scene inside her apartment. That one's that's a classic. Everybody, so if you could look for Trilogy of Terror, and I think it's streaming at Amazon. I think it's still there. That's one of the ones people should seek out, because that one's pretty cool. It's an anthology, and the last story, it's a classic, and it's pretty scary.
Very creepy. And there was a TV sequel, Trilogy of Terror 2.
Yes. Another one that people need to check out is Steven Spielberg's first official movie, which was on ABC, called Duel. Now, Duel is awesome, bro.
I've never seen that one before. You got me on that one.
Duel is a road movie. It's about this guy who's driving, and he starts getting stalked by a truck. And Steven Spielberg was a young guy from 1971, his first film, and the tension, bro, the tension that this man creates in this film, it's incredible.
So he was a prodigy even back then.
He already knew what he was doing. And it was just it came on ABC. It's available on Blu-ray now. This is one that people need to see because it keeps you on the edge of your seat. You never see the driver, which is incredible. So the demon itself is the truck, but we know somebody's driving it. And he's got this incredible scene where the main Dennis Weaver plays the main actor. He goes into a diner because he's scared because this fucking truck's after him. And there's this scene where the trucker gets off the truck. And you can see his cowboy boots, bro. And he's in there stalking Dennis Weaver.
This does sound really familiar now.
But Dennis Weaver doesn't know who he is. Dennis Weaver is hiding. So he's never seen the driver. But at one point, they're in the same room looking at each other. And Steven Spielberg does this incredible shot where he pans at the diner and you see a bunch of people. And one of them is the fucking driver, but we never find out who it is. And so that's a great scene. That's that's awesome. Another film that a lot of people, speaking of Stephen King, that's a classic for television is Salem's Lot from 1979.
Yes, Salem's Lot, yeah.
This film here, now this film is about 3 hours long, so I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have that kind of attention span.
Well, they're all long. I just want to say that. It is like 2 parts, and each one's 2 hours. The Stand is like 4 parts, and it's like an hour and a half each. So all these Stephen King movies are always long. Yes.
Now this film,
the books are long. The books are huge.
Now this film was directed by the Alpha Tobe Hooper, and there's a scene where the little vampire kid is the one everybody thinks about is when he's in the window looking into the window, bro. That's very scary. To this day, that sure gives me chills. So that's another one. We talked about it.
And the found footage stuff. We talked about that, and what about the found footage films? I asked you to talk about that. You went back to Stephen King, and it's fine. But I mean, if you want to keep going on that, hold on. Before we get to the found footage stuff, what is your opinion on the Shining? 97 versus the Stanley Kubrick film, because I think that the 97 movie, yes, it's more accurate to the original book, but I feel like the Stanley Kubrick movie is such a classic in how to make a creepy movie, and Stephen King hates that movie, dude. He hates it because it wasn't like the book, but talk about taking an idea and making it your own and making it great.
I'm partial to the Stephen King one, bro, because the Stanley Kubrick one, because that's to me that's the one that set the standard for the 70s as far as, I mean, there's so much going on in that film, but again, like you said,
Nicholson's performance carries that movie without question.
Yeah, and the cinematography and the staging of that movie, hell yeah. But
I think he told us that he set up the moon landing too. Let's not forget that one.
Well, yeah, the little kid Danny's wearing the fucking the NASA shirt as a wink. But the 97 version with the guy from Wings, I forget his name, bro. Steven Weber, is it?
Weber,
it's all right, but that one's the one that's more faithful, and again, that's more about the whole. Yeah, and it's more about the hotel because that's what Stephen King was talking about. Like he wanted the hotel to be more of a thing. But I've only seen it once and I didn't really like it and I never really went back to it. Okay. But let's go back to the found footage thing. Yeah. So like you said, the Blair Witch Project started this entire thing. Of course, before that we had the Italian films, the cannibal films, like Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox. But the story itself was only part of it. The found footage aspect of it wasn't the big thing. Later on in 1999, that's when we had the Blair Witch Project. So in the Blair Witch Project, like you said, it created this whole hoopla, and from there, people were like, "Dude, we could make money, and we don't on a
very tight budget, bro." Dog, the reality is, let's be real, you and I could make a movie at the Blair Witch Project today.
Yes,
very cheap.
But let's talk a little bit about some of the classics that came out. So I will say this, folks. 95% of the found footage are garbage. You have a couple of film students getting together. Nothing happens. They think it's witty. It's boring as hell. You get like 3 minutes at the end of the big reveal, whatever that is. And you have different ones. You have people going after aliens. You have the haunted house film. You have,
I think Blair Witch, I just want to say, I think what made Blair Witch so great was not just the fact that they created this awesome, like, backstory. That's what I think really worked. But just the fact that it came out at the right time, because timing is everything. And if the movie had come out 5 years later, everyone would have known it was bullshit because the internet was big. If it had come out 5 years earlier, it probably wouldn't have even,
bro.
It wouldn't have even gotten. Yeah, exactly. And those actors, this is what made those movies interesting. all those actors in that movie were completely unknown. If they had cast like somebody who was even in a TV movie, right? Even the Wings guy you mentioned, people would have picked up on it. Nobody had any clue who these actors were.
So, like I talked about it, there's a few motifs in these found footage movies. You have the guys going after the UFOs. You have the haunted house where they start like Paranormal Activity, and then you have the point of view serial killer movie, which first came about with a movie called Man Bites Dog, which was from France, I believe, where there was this serial killer that was, and actually Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer as well, but that was later. That was earlier, I mean, but that was really more of a narrative film. But as far as Man Bites Dog, it gave you the idea of the serial killer filming his own murders. And I bet you'll never guess the name of the serial killer, bro. I'll give it to you.
I have no idea.
You were close. His name was Benoit.
Wow.
And his first name was Chris. No, I'm joking.
No, still, that's bad. Yeah.
So let me give the people a few of the more classic found footage films before we get going. So the first one is called Troll Hunter. That one's great, bro. Because that one is about this film crew that's going around with this guy. They find this guy who claims he hunts trolls, and nobody fucking believes it, right? So they That's
a recent film. That's 2010.
Yes. So it's just the first one that came into my mind. And this film's incredible because they really didn't have any money, but the whole idea here is that at night they filmed this guy. It's a found footage film, and he fucking fights trolls. But some of these trolls are like 20 feet tall, bro, and they're like, it's a great movie, bro, and it's very addicting and very engrossing. Then you have Wreck. Wreck was another one that came later and really kind of re-energized the found footage thing. And what I like about Wreck was that the first one is very cerebral. It's kind of like an Alien. The TV crew goes into the apartment building where everybody's kind of demonically possessed, right? And it's very slow, but it's also very scary. It sets everything well. Then you have Wreck 2, where it picks up after Wreck, but then you have the military going in there to clean that fucking apartment building out after the TV, reporter, they saw everything on the news and all that. And that one's like Aliens, bro, because that one's fucking balls to the wall action. It's still scary, and it's a great fucking sequel. Then you have 3 and 4, which are not that good, but Wreck is another one. Of course, you have Cloverfield, you have Paranormal Activity. You have another one called the Poughkeepsie Tapes. Have you ever heard of the Poughkeepsie Tapes?
We talked about them, but I just want to say this about Paranormal Activity. I feel like the first 2 are probably, if I remember correctly, they're okay. Then it did start to get kind of old after a while.
Yeah.
It became that whole beating a dead horse thing. But anyways, keep on. Go ahead.
So then let me give the people the ones that I think they've never seen that they need to see. There's 3 of them here that just really left an impression on me. Yeah. The first one is called The Bay. Now, The Bay is not, there's no monsters in it. It's the way it's shot, because it's shot as this found footage that was discovered about this town that had this bacteria. I forget where they get it from. I think it's from the river or something. And the entire movie takes place. You have the CCTV cameras. You have some people recording, but you see all these people in this town dying from this bacteria, and you see this news reporter trying to uncover this story. But then the government shuts it down. So that's the whole thing about the movie, is that the government doesn't want you to see this, what happened to this little town. But you see all the characters, they're introduced. There's some sort of festival going on. And then little by little, they all start getting infected with this bacteria. And they don't turn into zombies. Or it's not that kind of movie. It's just creepy. And what starts to happen to this town as they all start getting infected and pus. It's very gory, too. So that's The Bay. People should check that one out. And I'm sure it's streaming somewhere. Another one, and this one has been catching some steam over the last year or so, is Hell House LLC. Now, this movie is pretty cool because this movie, one of the ways to make found footage scary is to start it off as this newscast and work your way backwards.
It's been done a lot. Let's be real. I mean, Chainsaw Massacre, the remakes did this in the 03. Remember the 03 remakes?
But I love that because it builds tension. Because you start meeting these people, and then later on, like for example, you have a scene where the guy would say, I don't know what John was thinking. Why did he go in there? And at the same time, you're going back to the found footage and you still see John there. So now your question is, what did he do? I mean, what did he do that was so scary? So little details like that. Whenever you have a found footage film that starts as some news broadcast and then it's giving you all the details of what happened on that night using that footage that was filmed, that's pretty fucking scary. And you could do a lot with it rather than just having these teenagers walk around with a video camera through the entire running time and it's all happening in real time. That's where they get kind of boring. So
I think a lot of it has to do with promotion, which is, again, why Blair Witch was so well. It's all about how well. Remember, when Blair Witch was coming out, they said the actors were dead. They weren't. They were on the MTV Video Music Awards that year. They were not dead, but they did all these great things that, man, they were ahead of their time. But continue.
So Hell House LLC is really good because it's about this crew that opens up a haunted house. And the film starts with shit already gone down. The news footage is talking about what happened last night was horrible. The images. So you're wondering, okay, what's going on? We got this footage of what happened last night. And they show the crew kind of happy. They're barely renting the house or whatever. And then as they start interviewing the survivors and showing you the footage, you start to see what happened that night and how shit went down. I'm not going to give it away because it's new. It is streaming on Amazon, I believe. So check that one out. That one will give you goosebumps because it's very scary, I think. And some of the scenes are incredible. Some of the reveals are incredible. And so that's Hell House LLC. It's a great found footage film. And it is building some momentum, which is good because more people are starting.
LLC.
Yes. So if you have Amazon, check it out. Another one that's great in kind of in this genre is Savage Land. Now that one's a little less known, but it's also an incredible found footage film. This film starts about something happened in this town where people were eaten, dismembered, and nobody knows what it is. So they arrest this guy who was taking pictures. And this guy, he's so scared in the beginning. He has the orange jumpsuit because they pretty much tried him for all the murders. But they start working their way backwards using the footage. And it turns out that there was some sort of demonic beings that were coming out and wiping this entire town, but nobody believes this guy because there's no proof. But the pictures show everything, and so but they were saying that he doctored them. So that's another great one because it's working backwards as well. So that's Savage Land. That's another great movie that kind of left me a little bit, with chills because just as the movie's going, you're getting all these revelations, and you're like, oh shit. And it has a lot of scary moments, So that's another one that really left me with as far as found footage.
What do you think the trick is to making a good found footage movie versus a bad one? Is it the backstory? Is that what really makes it special?
I think it's building the tension. I think it's like what Alfred Hitchcock said. It's not the monster that we're scared of. It's the fact that the monster is there. But our protagonists don't know he's there. Like if somebody goes inside a room and there's a monster in there and you know it, but they don't know it, you get that creep factor. Like, oh my God, what are they doing? And so I think building suspense. That's what suspense is the idea of the scare, not the scare itself that creeps us out. So that's why Insidious did that very, very well. Like Insidious build on that entire aspect of suspense.
James Wan, a lot of his movies are masterfully do that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So, and The Witch also did like The Witch. A lot of people don't like it because it's very slow, but the entire film has this sense of dread. If you could build a sense of dread throughout the entire film, like Hereditary had that, right? When you're watching Hereditary, you don't really quite know what's going on, but you're scared because of the way the filmmaker structured that film, where there's a lot of.
The first half is like a family drama, and then everything goes to shit.
That's right, but there's tension and there's suspense there. So there's this aura of like you have that knot on your throat, like you don't really know why, but it's there. And when you could craft that in a horror film, and of course that's different than the boo scares. You could have a movie filled with boo scares too, and I'm not saying they're wrong either. And hell, you could even have a movie that has both. But there is a lot of movies that have incredible dread throughout the entire movie, but they don't have a lot of boo scares, and I think those leave you more exhausted, which is, as a filmmaker, that's what you want as a horror filmmaker. You want to leave the crowd exhausted, like, oh my God,
I think The Shining has that. Because
The Shining has that. Hell yeah.
The claustrophobia of being inside of that hotel, it's not a haunted house, it's a haunted hotel. And that's even scarier because in a haunted house, it's small, which you would think that's worse, but with a hotel being so big, you can get lost a lot easier, and you might lose your friends and family because they might be on the other side of the hotel. You know, there's all kinds of elements there. You know, I like, you know, personally. Also, Rosemary's Baby. I put over this movie so much. The thread in that movie is that's one of the best movies ever made.
And also the dialogue. I mean, you have these creepy old people. One of my favorite scenes in that movie is when they look at the baby and then they're like, he's got his father's eyes. And then when
that's the end, yeah.
No, but also when
don't ruin it though. Don't ruin this one.
Okay, but there's a lot of dread there, and but it's also very dialogue based.
Also what I like about that movie is that it's that whole idea where as the movie goes on, you start to peel away layers of what's really going on. And I think that's what makes a great movie. That's what I think makes a great film. And what separates a good movie from a bad one is when you're peeling the layers away. If everything makes sense and gets more and more scary and you're not really sure what's happening or know what's going on, you know, like with Searching, I think, and that's not even a horror movie. They did a great job of that. And then with The Nun, I thought it was the opposite, where the more layers you peel away because of how poor the execution was, it just kind of got stupid. And that's the thing you got to be careful with when you're, and I'm not a filmmaker, but I guess when these guys are making these movies, you got to make sure that when you're revealing things little by little, that's not stupid and doesn't ruin your suspension of disbelief. And that's what I think makes a good movie versus a bad one that does those things.
So to answer your question, I would have to go with the sense of dread throughout the film because it creeps you out. You know there's something going on, and it's also good when it's structured to where you're discovering the same things that the protagonist is discovering, and both of you know there's some creep factor going on. And when it hits you, it's gonna have an impact because at that point you're ready for it. That bubble's about to burst. Now The Nun I didn't like for a lot of reasons.
But you get where I'm coming from about The Nun, right? How the more you get into the backstory, the more it just kind of became more disjointed. I think they tried to do too many things and they didn't keep the story focused. That's my opinion anyways.
And they also show the monster way too much. The Nun was, you try to minimize that because it allows your brain to kind of connect the dots as far as what the monster is.
But maybe the reason why is we already saw Valak in Conjuring 2, and they probably assumed that. By the way, Valak is a perfect NXT FCW name. Just wanted to say that. There's probably a worker. Hayden Vanson probably had that nickname at one point.
What I like about The Nun is that the lead guy was the guy from Hateful Eight, bro, Bob. Mexican.
That's right, our boy. Now, I will say this. I do like how it ties into Conjuring 1. Even though it did feel a bit forced, I did like the way it tied into it a lot. Without spoiling it.
But this is my expectations, unfortunately, so it has nothing to do with the film. I thought, because we're promised the backstory of Vladek or whatever the fuck his name is.
Valak, yeah. We didn't get any of that shit. We still don't know what it is.
Well, the thing is that it was just a demon impersonating a nun. I thought the whole idea was that something happened to this demon. Maybe
it was a human being that became a demon, right?
That's right, and there was some sort of. But so essentially, we're back to where we started. It's just another story with Vladek. Like there was nothing solved.
That actually brings up a question I want to ask you. How do you feel about horror prequels? Because I think a lot of them fail because, in my opinion, because of what I talked about with Mike, you know, with the Halloween 2 thing of Rob Zombie, I think that taking away the mystery of the antagonist can hurt the antagonist. And I know that I get what they're trying to do, but it's sort of like that whole thing you and I talked about on KLB with Kane. Like in 1997, 1998, Kane was a freaking main event guy. Go back and watch the Attitude Era. He was a main event guy. Once they started doing shit like having him fall in love with China, be X-Pac's buddy, talk about having a burnt dick, and then Kane, if you remember, bro, Kane became a joke. Like 99, 2000, 2001, Kane was a freaking joke, dude. It was like every week it was a meme. Tonight, you will face off against Kane every Monday night, and he would always lose. Like it became a joke. And I think that's because Russo and these guys tried to humanize him, whereas I think with horror prequels, sometimes they try it and it works. Like I think a good example of a good horror prequel is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. I love that movie to death. R. Lee Ermey is amazing. It's everything I want in a prequel. But so many other horror prequels just don't work, and I want to ask your opinion on them and why they don't work and what could make them work.
like you said, you're revealing too much of the monster. You don't want to do that. You want to make the monster stay in the background. That's what Steven Spielberg did so great in Jaws. The shark. I mean, a lot of it was by accident because they couldn't get that fucker to work. But right. So he had to improvise. But you wanna keep the monster behind the scenes. But it's our nature to want to know more about these things. Well, why? What's the motivation? Sometimes the scariest thing is not why the motivation is. It's like going back to Halloween. Like once you found out it was the sister, like
that's what Mike said. It took away from the impact of him killing random babysitters.
The scariest shit about Halloween is like Quentin Tarantino said. He said, the scariest thing about Halloween is why her? That's fucking scary, bro. Because when Michael Myers escapes from the sanitarium, he could have gone anywhere, and he ended up fixating on these 3 babysitters. And I also don't like the retcon that he was focused on Laurie. Laurie just happened to be the final girl.
That's right. That was totally a retcon. If you watched the first movie, you could tell that there was really no connection there.
No, it was just this maniac who escaped and decided to just kill these women on this night. I mean, he also killed the truck guy that he got the jumpsuit from and all that, but that's besides the point. And the thing is, that's scary, bro. That why her? Because at the end of the day, when you leave the movie theater back in 1978, it could also be you. There's no motivation for this guy, and the reason why he survives at the end, which is it was a genius thing by John Carpenter, is because when you're leaving the theater, he's still out there. Right, and of course back then we had a more I guess you could say a more gullible society. It wasn't as jaded as we are now.
Yeah,
back
but there
then,
have always been serial killers, and that's the scary part.
That's right, and so that's this whole idea of that movie, and once they turned it into the sister, it completely invalidated your fear because it's like, okay, well, I'm not related. Who gives a shit? He's not gonna come after me now. He's coming after the family. But it's the idea of absolutely pure evil that's coming out, and you happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. You know what I'm saying? And that's fucking scary to me.
So horror.
And I still don't know who showed this fucking guy how to drive, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, who knows? So horror prequels. A good again. What do you think? Okay.
They never work, bro. Look at the Alien franchise. They've been trying to do. They misfired twice.
No, they misfired twice. And there's plot holes now where the new one contradicts the first one, and it's a mess. And I don't know.
The thing is that everybody the classic image on Alien. The thing I don't like about horror prequels is that they'll fixate on a certain portion of the original. Like in Alien, everybody fixates on the engineer who happens to be a victim of a face hugger, right? That's the classic image. Yes. So now we gotta find out how did this happen. So now it's gonna take 3 fucking movies to tell us, bro, how that fucking guy ended up in that chair and a fucking face hugger got no, we don't need to know that because now you're gonna work backwards.
We don't even know, and we still don't know. We still have no idea. Even to this day, they didn't tell us. And I thought they were going to with the new one.
And that's part of the frustration, but they planned it as a trilogy, and it didn't work out. And I think they abandoned it already. I don't think we're ever going to know.
Yeah, I've heard that they abandoned it. I've heard that there's, like, a bunch of bullshit. Now, okay, so let me ask you a question then. What do you think made Annabelle Creation work, and what do you think made Annabelle, the other prequel, not work? Because they're both prequels. Why does one work better than the other, in your opinion?
Okay, well, first of all, that one, because you had a fanboy director, so at that point, he decided to retcon the entire thing. That was the only way he was gonna fucking get away with it, bro. Elaborate.
You're talking about Annabelle Creation.
I'm talking about
our boy Davey Sandberg, bro, who's now directing fucking what, Shazam?
That's right.
Talk about push, bro. He got the rocket up his ass.
Well, that's because he proved that he could handle. That's how filmmakers come up. They handle little projects, big. Yeah, except Rhino Johnson. Let's not give him another shot, even though he's gonna get it.
No, but I will say this though: this guy really got a push. Not every filmmaker gets this kind of a push.
So what David Sandberg did was, he said, "Fuck it, I'm not gonna deal with fucking Annabelle, the one that came before it. I'm gonna do my own story." And then
he still made it tie in.
Yeah, but it's bullshit because it still doesn't make sense. Like the original Annabelle had a whole nother story, and then at the end it's revealed that the girl was part of this the whole time. But that doesn't matter because he pretty much started from the beginning. And also, I think he succeeded also because he was allowed to go way back in time really start. So it's almost like he got a clean slate.
Like Puppet Master 3 when they go back to Egypt.
No, they go back to Germany, bro.
Germany, okay, yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah,
no, which one's the one where they go to Egypt? Isn't there one where they go to Egypt where he fight with the gypsies?
I'm sure there is, bro. There's about 1,000 of those films.
Okay, but anyways, continue.
So that's the reason why it worked, because he was able to create his own story from scratch, and then at the end do his best to kind of connect the one that flopped, the one that everybody hates. But again, in order for that to work, you do have to get a very creative filmmaker. You got to give him some sort of liberty to do what he wants to do, and they did, and it worked. Warner Brothers was good on that one. Warner Brothers has dropped the ball on the DC universe, but they're not dropping the ball on fucking these kind of films, bro. So
So you think that what helped him out was going back very, very, very far into the past and not setting it in the modern setting.
Yes, and giving him the freedom to kind of make sense of the ending with however he felt was possible, which at the end of the day, no matter what, is going to have plot holes, because, you know, that one was kind of a mess. But so that's why that worked. But in general, not just in the horror genre, prequels don't work in general, and we found out this with Solo and all the Star Wars and all that, because there's no stakes, even in the Hobbit, because there's no stakes. Like, for example,
I just want to clarify for the Hobbit book came before Lord of the Rings when Tolkien first released them. So the books are not a prequel, the films are. I want to clarify that because Tolkien should not get any heat for this. This was totally the Peter Jackson, and that wasn't his fault. It was the studio, they wanted to make Lord of the Rings first. But
so what happens is this. So Tolkien did the right way. He raised the stakes as the books move forward.
That's right.
So how are you going to go from the Lord of the Rings, which is pretty much the world with this fucking ring, and Gollum trying to get it and whatnot?
The War of the Ring, yeah.
So the stakes are very, very high in this film, and if our heroes don't succeed, then there's going to be a very, very, very high price to pay. And then you go back to the Hobbit, where it's so minimal, like the stakes are minimal, the world is smaller.
And also, I want to say this about prequels too, because you're covering the overarching thing. One of the problems I've noticed with prequels, and I think almost every major Hollywood prequel has this problem. Annabelle Creation did not. I don't like when prequels, and this is an eye-rolling thing, they're constantly referencing stuff from the newer movie, or from the original movies. You have to throw in, and this is a problem all across the board, you have to throw in something to where somebody says, oh, wait a minute, I know what that is. Every goddamn prequel. George Lucas did it with the Star Wars prequels, and same thing with the fucking Lord of the Rings Hobbit movies, bro. Peter Jackson added a fight between like Sauron and like the black wraiths, and when he goes to fucking, remember that movie? That was not in the Hobbit. That was not in the Hobbit book at all. It was a cool fight. Don't get me wrong. Like, Cate Blanchett's there. It was a cool fight. It was cool, but like, it's like another tie-in. Like he's gonna go, oh, I will have my revenge. Oh, I get it. That's gonna be in the Lord of the Rings. And then with Solo, oh, he got I know what the Millennium Falcon is. Oh, the Kessel Run. Like, that's what these fucking things are every time. And it's almost like they are way, way too, what's the word? Shoehorned in. They're too shoehorned in over and over again. They all have it.
Because all you have to do is establish the connection with the story. You don't have to establish the connection with the characters, and that's what they
every little thing.
That's right, because it's so dumb, and that's probably why Tarantino never wanted to do the Vega Brothers film, because he felt maybe he had to throw all this shit, even though maybe also because Michael Madsen gained about 300 pounds in between Reservoir Dogs and whatever.
As much as Larry Fishburne did between Matrix 1 and 2, bro. That's another story.
So the stakes aren't there. Like, for example, when we're watching the Kessel Run in Solo, like, they were not in danger because they've already survived it. We already know that. And that's an inherent problem with sequels, is that some of the tension is completely gone when our heroes are in trouble in the prequels, because there's no way they're gonna die, because then how the hell is the next one gonna take place? So when you rob that from the artistic point of view, it's very difficult to get creative and add tension. You can't get heat, because that heat doesn't matter, because in the next movie the character's going to be there anyway. So that's one of the most inherent problems with prequels, and that's why I particularly don't like them, because it's very difficult to come up with a good prequel that's still going to give you that high risk and the stakes being so high that the following movie did.
Yeah, you would have to set it in another, like have it focus on another character in the same universe. I think those work.
Rogue
One was a little bit better than Solo when it came to that kind of stuff.
That's right. And the reason what, because that was his own story. Now, let me tell you this. Indiana Jones got it right, because if you notice, they're not really connected. Those films are all, it's like you're watching chapters of a guy's life, and that's all they are. And so he could go back 10 years before the first one, like Indiana Jones 2 is before Indiana Jones 1, but it doesn't matter because those movies don't really have anything to do with that. All you're doing is you're world building and you're adding layers to the character of Indiana Jones. That's all you're doing.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
And one thing that Spielberg and Lucas did in those movies is that it wasn't a constant reference. Like, there were a few things that were like, okay, we know that Indy hates snakes and bugs and things like that, obviously. But it wasn't like in these movies they were constantly referencing Raiders over and over and over again. And even Crystal Skull didn't do it. And I respect them for that because they could have gone that route. And to me, it's just very cheap. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that's the thing that, that brings us up to sequels. Sequels have
I just feel like, okay, I just want to say one thing. I feel like with Temple of Doom, it would have pissed me off if during that movie he would have been like, I never had a problem with Germans before. Come on, bro. I would have been like, and they do that shit all the time in these movies.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I think the best thing to do is avoid and going back to the horror theme, like Halloween showed us this. All the classic franchises have shown us this. When the monster's dead, the story's over. And the problem is when you try to bring them back to cash in. And we've had this problem with Nightmare on Elm Street, with Friday the 13th, and with Halloween, and with Texas Chainsaw.
You could babyface them in some ways too. Remember that.
That's right, because they get so much heat. But Texas Chainsaw didn't even try, bro. Other than part one and part.
Charlotte Flair, dog. They're gonna heal her on accident, bro. And let me tell you something, I've seen her leak pictures, and that's a scary story in itself, bro. That's all.
Oh, you're a dick, bro. Come on now. So you lost my train of thought with that one.
We're talking about horror prequels and how as sequels move on with these characters, with the horror monsters, they become less impactful, I guess is the way you were gonna say.
Yeah, what it is that when you get hired to do a sequel, what you don't want to do is run into the rut of creating the same story that happened in part one. And a lot of these movies do that. They essentially tell the same story. Why the fuck would I want to see that if part one probably already did it better? Again, with Jimmy Cameron, that's why his sequels are classics, because he enhances the first one. He did it with Terminator and he did it with Aliens. He gives you more. In other words, he's continuing the story. He's not recycling the story. He's continuing it. And that's, if you are going to get a sequel, that's what you have to do. Now, unfortunately, once you're talking about 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's where it gets hard, because I don't care how good of a writer you are, you're eventually going to start recycling shit by default, and that's where they start getting more muddier and muddier.
Yeah, you're stuck in those parameters. Also, I just want to quickly, on a side note here, Blair Witch 2 is literally one of the worst movies ever made, because what they tried to do with that movie was they dumped the found footage film and they made it into an actual, quote, horror movie, and it has some of the worst acting, worst dialogue. That movie fucking sucks bad. And it's one of those things where that's another mistake that they made, where they try to turn it, I don't know if it's an ego thing or what, but it's like, okay, we created this found footage movie, let's make a sequel of it with the same lore. And it's like you then realize that, and this goes back to what you said. Remember how you said a minute ago that when the monster is dead, the story is over? When you reveal that it's fake, when people found out that Blair Witch was not real, the gimmick is dead, bro. The gimmick is dead, and the only thing you could do is continue in the same path or drop the gimmick.
Well, that movie, they would try to go meta with it, because remember the whole story, because they did take that into consideration, and they try to do this thing where they go back to Berkowitz or whatever, and shit starts to happen, and then for the third act, you don't know what's real and you don't know what's fake, and in the end it's revealed that everything was real, and it gets very convoluted there towards the end. But they did try to play with those kind of expectations that this craze is over.
Failed. Unlike New Nightmare, where Wes Craven's reading the script and it's on his computer, bro, with his fucking charismatic smile, bro.
Well, that's cool, because let me tell you about New Nightmare. The thing about that one that makes it cool is that what Wes was trying to tell with that movie is that Freddy got so big, the actual character, Freddy Krueger, he got so big that there was an actual demon in the real world. So now we're talking about this is some Vince Russo shit here.
No, this was Vince Russo done right, bro. Remember, according to Dave, if Kenny Omega does it, that's all right. That's okay. But if remember that, let's not forget that detail.
So that was what Wes Craven, and again, if you have an open mind towards horror movies, if you're a little bit older, because New Nightmare, you need to have a certain mindset to enjoy it. It's a very, very good movie, bro. I think the
very
themes
wacky is what it it is.
Yeah, but I think as a meta film, it works incredibly well. I think having the great Bobby England get 2 paydays as Bobby England and as Freddy
That's right.
was
He's in it
pretty
as
cool.
Bobby England, bro. That pops me so much without the makeup.
Because the thing is that everybody's freaked out because they're saying, "What do you mean? Freddy's a character. There's no way." But there's a demon that comes in the form of Freddy. See, Freddy Krueger's not the killer in this movie. It's a demon that's impersonating.
Freddy Krueger's not real.
That's right. And so you have the Full House kid who's getting all kinds of paydays during this time.
That's right. We pop for him, bro. Boys
Pet
like
Cemetery.
penis and girls like vagina, bro. We pop for him, bro.
He was in Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah.
Pet Cemetery. This one. He was all over the
killed
place.
in Pet Cemetery, bro.
And very sad scene by him.
Death is better.
I can't see that film because of him, bro. Herman fucking Monster's in it.
Gage.
I remember you gave me some heat because I didn't name my cat fucking Church, bro, which was right in front of me the whole time.
Right in front of you, bro. And speaking of Church, M. Night Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan Ling Dong.
We're gonna talk about him here in a minute because he deserves his own little section. But I love.
How about the fact that Quentin Tarantino consistently calls him that, bro, in serious interviews? Like
Shyamalan Ling Dong. He's like Chris Jericho, bro. That's a Chris Jericho type joke, bro.
But it's like, because every year they do a gimmick, right, where Tarantino gives his top 10 every year, and then he's like, yeah, M. Night Shyamalan Ling Dong, he directed, Signs, and it's like, dude, have some respect for this. He's a peer of yours, what the fuck?
It's hard to respect him for all the shit he's done, but, okay, well, if you want to talk about M. Night Shyamalan real quick, here's a guy who, had a really tremendous push in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then just kind of squandered it, and now he's starting to come back.
Oh my god, bro. This motherfucker, he worked me, bro. I loved him, I hated him, and then all of a sudden, I fucking loved him again.
I'm in the same boat as you. I despised him for a long time.
So The Sixth Sense swept the nation, right? If anybody hasn't seen The Sixth Sense, check it out.
I think it's a very overrated film, honestly.
But not the first time if you've never seen it.
No, I never liked it. Now, Unbreakable, though, that's my shit.
I love that movie.
We got the sequel coming out, or the next one in the universe, in January.
So Unbreakable is a lot of people have referred to it as his own origin story of Superman, and I'll leave it at that because I don't want to say what it is. But that's his interpretation of how he could create the origin story of Superman, right?
I don't like the idea of people saying it's a superhero movie. It's a thriller. And then it sort of has superhero elements, but it really is a thriller, and it's creepy. It's a creepy movie.
But okay. So first of all, M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong, his big hero was Alfred Hitchcock. So a lot of his movies.
Him here in a minute, but yeah.
A lot of his movies are based on building suspense, and of course the big twist. M. Night Shyamalan is known for the big twist.
Yeah, which is classic, like Tales from the Crypt, TV stuff. Are You Afraid of the Dark does it? That's just classic, like short story stuff, and that is what he's known for. But the problem with his career is that the twist got more and more stupid as time went by. That was the problem,
But
with the devil being the grandma, it's fucking stupid. I'm sorry.
But the Unbreakable twist was fucking awesome, all right? Because nobody was expecting that. No, because the trailers were.
Same thing with Split.
That was really good.
People
and of
popped
course,
in that movie theater, bro.
So with Split, at the end, I'm watching. Why the fuck is this fucking guy the Beast? Why is he scaling? He's scaling walls. And remember, we have no reference point. He's scaling walls or whatever. And then you get the ending, and it's like, oh shit, okay. And then, of course, you had Glass coming out next year, which is going to be the trilogy. Yeah. And so that was cool. But then he had, like, fucking The Village and Lady in the Water and The Happening.
I actually think The Village is not that bad. I think it gets a lot of shit. It's not the best, but it's not. I think it was pretty creative what he did in that film.
My favorite film of his is Signs, bro.
Signs is the best movie. Well, that and Unbreakable, those two.
Because Signs, what he does good is that what we talked about earlier, he builds a sense of dread. Because first of all, he puts his family, Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix and the kids.
Mel Gibson, bro.
Are you sure? All right.
Well, sometimes he used to be.
There you go. He puts them in this little farmhouse with a bunch of cornfields, and then there's like this alien invasion. So already you're building the claustrophobia. And the way the movie plays out once the aliens kind of come to the house, phenomenal fucking filmmaking, bro. The way he plays with our expectations. They have that classic birthday scene where they're watching the news and the little kids in Argentina are having the birthday, and he does that reveal of the alien. Fucking phenomenal stuff, bro. I really like that movie a lot.
I agree. I think a lot of people will agree with you on that one. But then he did After Earth, and that was like his last, like, you know, panned movie. Then he started coming back with The Visit, bro. That was.
I love The Visit, bro. I love The Visit.
That was his comeback movie, I think. That's when everybody was like, "Oh, wait a minute, is he doing good movies again?" Because
and then Split, and then Glass, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so this guy's pretty good, bro. People should check out The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Split, The Visit, and not The Last Airbender though.
No, but you should definitely watch Unbreakable and Split before you watch Glass, even though they're not traditional horror movies. They're more like thrillers. You know, like Seven. Like, you could put Seven in the category of it being a horror movie, but it's really not. It's more of a thriller. I think a lot of times thrillers and horrors kind of go hand in hand, because I think that the best horror movies have like a thriller sense to them, where it's like a mystery being unraveled and it fucks with you. And I think that some of the good thriller movies have a horror-esque vibe to them, in the sense that there's some kind of killer or some kind of antagonist that we don't see. So I think they do go hand in hand.
So will you put Silence of the Lambs as a thriller or horror?
No, I put that as a thriller, but that's a damn good movie. I mean, that's not one that I would consider a supernatural movie by any means, but I think it's a fucking classic. Now, I want to talk to you about Alfred Hitchcock, bro, because do you think that Hitchcock movies, obviously as a film fan, they're classics, do you think that people of the era now would have a hard time getting into them?
Yes, I do. But that's because he was a pioneer, right? So it's like all the tropes that he established, everybody's done them, everybody's copied him. But he was the one that created all these things. He was the one that was really established.
Others did it better, but he did it first, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, I always bring up like Hoyce Gracie, right? Like, Hoyce Gracie ain't shit anymore, but he still deserves to be a legend because he was the first to establish all these holds and use the jiu-jitsu thing, and now everybody does it. So he looks like he ain't shit, but he is a legend. Same thing with Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, the guy has some great fucking films, and of course he used a lot of our conventions against ourselves. When we're watching one of his films, we think the film is going somewhere, and then bam, he'll hit us with a reveal, and it'll be something else. And he's the one that gave us the red herring. He's the one that gives us the MacGuffins, all these little tricks to get you involved in something, and then he'll fucking turn it up on you. That's all Hitchcock, bro. That's all him. And now we see it all the time. So he's definitely one of those guys that people need to see and respect.
And also he played with music. Like, you know, we talk about in the Halloween episode how, you know, you hear the Halloween piano. Dun, 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 dun. That's iconic, but the Psycho theme in Psycho was like, I don't know if it was the first time that was ever done, but you know, the Sid Vicious song or whatever, you know, that to me, like, he was great at doing that as well with the music.
It's like let's take Psycho for example. Like Psycho, you know, the entire plot of like when Johnny Lee gets to the hotel or whatever, that's all a red herring. You give this idea that that's the character we're gonna follow from the very beginning, because he builds her as the lead actress, right? And then all of a sudden, right in the middle, and this is a spoiler alert for a movie that came out in 1960, right in the middle, this motherfucker kills her. At that time, that was like nobody was expecting that. Like, what the fuck? Now who's gonna carry this film, you know? Yeah. And so those little details became common form later on. But Alfred Hitchcock was one of the first to create that shit, and he did a lot of them and constant. I mean, this guy has, you know, we talk about Jimmy Cameron's fucking track record. This guy had like Rear Window, Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho. I mean, he had all these classics. The Birds later on, all these films, but not only were they classics, he introduced something new as far as being able to film a movie that wasn't there before. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, or even brought it to the mainstream, because at the end of the day, filmers would tell you that, you know, the Europeans were doing all this shit way before. But yes, as far as bringing it to the mainstream in America, Hitchcock was kind of the first ones to introduce it to a lot of the tropes that are of thrillers and of horror and all that stuff, and even of drama that we follow now. So yeah, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. First ballot, as Dave Meltzer would say.
All right, with that said, we're going to bring part one of this two-part episode of the Geekdom101 podcast to an end. Thank you so much for listening this week, and next week we're going to present part two of me and Draven's discussion on the classic horror movies for Halloween month here on the Geekdom101 podcast. We're going to get into some zombie movies. We're going to talk about more of the specific genres and eras and give you a list. He actually has a whole list of movies for you to check out and pick from. Most of them are available streaming, so if you haven't seen these, they're definitely worth watching, and especially around this holiday. So again, I want to thank you guys for your consistent support of the Geekdom101 podcast and of all my projects. Remember to check out the Geekdom101 YouTube, my Dragon Ball anime channel, and of course World of Geekdom, which is my movie, wrestling, and life channel.